we're living in an age of tremendous technological change that has displaced a lot of people in the workforce, and that displacement, according to any number of smart people, is going to continue higher up the white-collar food chain. On the other hand, there's a big debate about how we may be missing some of the productivity impact, and Sandy, what you're saying about cross-border transactions really reflects that. So positive, negative. Social compact between countries and companies is changing. In some ways, companies are sort of flying over some of the issues of the nation state, which puts them under political pressure, but also creates opportunities. In this environment, what advice would you offer for the business leaders here? What do they need to be thinking about, and what are maybe some of the unexplored risks and opportunities? Fran, do you want to start?
Sure. I mean, I think the best example, and I know there are some people from GE here, is Jeff Immelt, and how, look, there are multiple examples of how Jeff Immelt is his own Secretary of State and his own National Security Advisor, right? Despite disagreements between the U.S. government and whether it's France or it's Saudi Arabia, whatever our government concerns are, the business community has the ability to sort of bridge over that. There are multiple examples of that in history, but I think GE is a good example of right now. And so while there are risks, businesses are not waiting for a signal from the U.S. government about how to interact with foreign governments. And there will be opportunities. I mean, I do worry about China and Russia. We haven't had the time to talk about them, but I will say, you have an increasingly assertive Russia. A new president is going to come in with a domestic agenda. They always do, but they're going to have to deal with the foreign policy implications of an aggressive Russia. You've got Iran meddling in a number of countries in the Middle East. That's the bad news. You've got the good news of the deal. And China, if you look across history, countries that begin to become assertive outside their borders typically have something going on inside that they want to distract their populations from. And so whether it's the China and the South China Sea, Russia in Syria, we're seeing increasing aggression in countries that are feeling real economic pressure.
That's fascinating. Anne?
I think there's an interesting question about, particularly with publicly listed companies, about what the social compact is, because I think the sense that companies used to have a broader compact with society, the defined benefit pension scheme, for example, would be one example of that. And we've taken away, by the fact that we've outsourced large parts of the value chain, by the fact that we've given people a more short-term tenure, if you like, to the company, I think we have somewhat changed that compact at the same time as the shareholder, the primacy of the shareholder, over and above all other stakeholders, seems to have increased. And I think there is an uncomfortable question for all of us who are involved in public companies to challenge ourselves to say, is part of the reason that we have this disenfranchised section of society, it's not just about the absolute levels of income, it's about the security of income that people have, and it's about this feeling that they are no longer valued as part of that value chain. And I think, we don't have time to talk about it now, but I think there is something in that we just need to find a way of discussing.
You've hit something very important, which is that there is a big debate, not just about short-termism versus long-termism, but who companies are run for and how. And I think that that's a debate that's really going to expand. Sandy, last word to you.
Yeah, so I think, on both of these points, one of the interesting things about Johnson & Johnson, it's been around for 130 years. We have a credo, which I think all of you are aware of, that we talk about our responsibility to society, to the communities in which we operate in, and it's a big part of who we are. I think the flip side of what you've just talked about is that many shareholders and many analysts are now requiring companies to demonstrate their social responsibility, and we all know about the indices that are being created. And one of the things that I find fascinating is that there are a lot of business leaders who are actually stepping up and making political statements in a way that they've never done before, that they felt that was not my responsibility, it's somebody else's, I'm just a business guy. And I think what we're seeing is in some ways, large corporations such as ourselves, we have a responsibility to actually engage in society, particularly when governments are not functioning very well. And we are doing that in a big way. I mean, we care about access to health, and we go and work with governments and find, through technology, actually in many ways, how do we actually get access to health care for people who have no access to it? And we think it's something we have to do because it's the only way we're going to survive another 130 years. So I do think there's this odd split of many people, just to your example, not shutting down, but becoming more narrow in their views of what their role is in society. But there are other companies like J&J, GE is another example, where we're saying, no, we actually have to do the opposite. We have to be a much larger voice in the overall society and community, not just in the U.S., but globally. And to me, that's an encouraging sign that we're trying to fill a vacuum, and it's being accepted. That's the other thing that I find fascinating, is that when business leaders stand up and make a public statement about their views, in most cases it's actually, people are accepting that's a good thing for you to be doing.
Well, I think people know growth depends on it at this
Absolutely.
stage.
Yep.
So 18 minutes, and we did give you the world, thanks to these amazing women.